Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Thursday's episode of Trending, brought to you, as always, in association with Iconic Coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off. To start this morning, this is a story that was breaking overnight, so my alarm went off at 5, as it always does, got up and I saw what was happening. So it's quite difficult to make an educated comment on it, I guess. So I guess, I'm going to look at a couple of things, but I'm sure more will come out. This is from The Guardian this morning. Washington, D.C. shooting suspect in custody after 2 Israeli embassy staff killed near Capitol Jewish Museum. Now, police are naming the alleged shooter as Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, and he has reportedly shouted, "Free Palestine." As I say, it's difficult to make a comment until all the information, or at least a lot more information, has come out about what's gone on, but it hasn't stopped world leaders and it hasn't stopped Benjamin Netanyahu from obviously jumping on the attack and using it to poke at pro-Palestinians and pro-Palestinian protesters in particular, as if they're all kind of lumped in with this guy, Elias Rodriguez. I've got no doubt that it will be used to bring in, some kind of legislation, perhaps, or used as an excuse to kind of squash protests of saying, look, these people are aligned with terrorists. This is what happens. This is where it leads. It leads to this horrendous killing of 2 embassy workers. My first point is, can we just stop killing each other, please? And I mean that genuinely. I know that sounds like almost like a primary school. Oh, there's so much more at play in the world. Yeah, okay, there is. But can we just agree on that to start? Like, we can argue about all the different things and all the religions and all, whose land belongs to who and all this kind of stuff. We can have all these arguments. That's fine. We can argue about whether you've got the preferred pronouns being used at work. Whatever you want to argue about it. But can we just agree, before we start, can we just stop killing each other, please? That would be great. And that would be a really good place to begin, I think, to then, go out and, like I say, discuss and argue about whatever else. If we can just agree on that would be fantastic. What I will say as well, though, is, and this is said with utmost confidence, given the fact that very little information has come out, is that there is so much more to know about Elias Rodriguez, about who he is, about where he's from, about who he's connected to, about whether American intelligence agencies had him on a radar. And the reason I can say that with utmost confidence is because it's what happens every single time. Whether it be a shooting, whether it be a bombing, whether it be a car, or a truck being driven into a group of shoppers at a Christmas market in Europe. It doesn't matter what it is. Any act of terrorism or perceived terrorism, it always links back every single time, whether it be in London or in Hamburg or in New York City or in this case in Washington, D.C. There's always more to know. And so I think it's important to, instead of jumping on oh my goodness me, look at the Palestinians, aren't they all terrorists? Look at the Muslims, aren't they all terrorists? I mean, well, his name's Elias Rodriguez, so it's slightly, different, really. I'm guessing he's a Mexican or a South American at least. Before we jump on that, let's try and be a little bit streetwise and go, okay, what else is there to know about this? What am I not being told? Because the media lies to us, we know that. Governments lie to us, we know that. The intelligence services lie to us. Law enforcement lies to us, we know that. So let's wait and see what happens in the next coming days and weeks or even months to see where this comes from and who this guy is and who he connects into. Another thing that's worth noting as well is, will they connect this act of barbarism, of murder, to Iran? Because at the moment we're in a bit of, we're in chaos season, aren't we, ladies and gentlemen, if we're honest? But we're in this kind of position at the moment when it comes to the Middle East particularly, but also when it comes to Ukraine, where you've got Ukrainian nationals setting fire to houses belonging to the UK Prime Minister. There's lots of states of flux going on, lots of plates in the air, and it's kind of, what's going on. Now, that's the time when things get passed either through legislation or when people invade people or attack people. It tends to happen at a stage where everyone's looking around going, what's going on? Look at COVID, for instance. When did they decide to put up all the 5G masts everywhere? When everyone was in their houses watching the telly going, what's going on? So having said that, Israel, this is an article this morning, breaking this morning from the Times of Israel. Israel said, readying to quickly, it's not very well written. Israel said, readying too quick. Well, that doesn't really work, so I'm going to edit that. Israel is said to be readying quick strikes against Iranian nuclear sites if the US-Iran talks fail. I can't believe that's a headline in a newspaper. It literally doesn't read. Right, I've had to edit that. I'm going for a job at the Times of Israel. Israel is getting ready to quickly strike Iran. See, that's better. If ongoing talks between the United States and the Islamic Republic over the latter's nuclear program break down. Axios reported Wednesday, citing a pair of Israeli sources. Bibi is waiting for the nuclear talks to collapse. Of course he is. He's probably waiting like that. He's waiting for the talks to collapse and for the moment Trump will be disappointed about the negotiations and open to giving him the go-ahead. That's mad, isn't it? That is mad. You want to bomb a country and you're literally like, there's conversations going on to come to a peaceful solution to Iran, Israel, America, the Middle East in general. And you're there going, I'm waiting for it to all go wrong. So he gives me the go-ahead so I can go and throw some missiles over. It's a mad world we live in. Honestly, it's a mad world we live in. According to the sources, the Israeli intelligence community now thinks the nuclear talks could soon collapse. So they'll be very happy about that. After previously believing an agreement was close. One of the sources said the military believes the window to attack Iran may soon slam shut. That's annoying, isn't it? Requiring Israel to move fast if negotiations do not pan out, without saying if the IDF reached that assessment. So what they're saying basically is we want to attack Iran, but it looks like we're running out of time. Oh, that's annoying. Right, well, we might have to just go for it anyway. Now, I can say that because Israel wants to attack Iran, and they have never made a secret of it. Benjamin Netanyahu, has gone to America several times over the last few decades, reiterating his desire for the United States, obviously he'd rather the US did it for him, to attack Iran. So, you know, that is not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory to sit here and say, well, they want to go for Iran. To be fair to Bibi, it's one of the only things he's not lied about. He's very open about the fact that that's what they want. And it then makes me think how much of this kind of fallout between Trump and Netanyahu and stuff is just window dressing. Because now if Iran and Israel, you know, go at loggerheads and Iran fires a load of missiles into Tehran or whatever, the US can almost have some sort of plausible deniability. They can go, well, hey, it's nothing to do with us, mate. I've sort of, you know, I've cooled ties between myself and Benjamin Netanyahu. So then when the MAGA lot go, hey, hang on, Donald, we voted for a peaceful president. We voted for an anti-war president. What are you doing supporting strikes on Iran? Which, by the way, will come with strikes coming the other way. You know, Iran is not Iraq, ladies and gentlemen. It's not Afghanistan. It's a major power. And so if you attack them, they are not going to take it lying down. Then suddenly, if those people come to Trump saying, you know, we didn't vote for this, he can say, well, mate, I didn't have anything to do with it. I told them that I didn't, you know, agree. I was trying to have negotiations. They did that all off their own back. And then what happens is Iran fires something back at Israel, and then suddenly it switches, and America goes, hang on, that's our greatest ally. What do they give you in return? Doesn't matter. They're their greatest ally. And then they'll go and stick up for Israel, and you know, the rest is history. I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope these negotiations work because, you know, like I said at the top, can we just stop killing people, please? It's very, very, very boring now. What else is boring? Right. Well, the agenda in general is pretty boring, isn't it? As it plays out in all its different guises. So this next story, General Manager of the Bank of International Settlements promotes central bank digital currencies. Well, of course he does, because it's the cult plan. A cashless society has always been the plan. But here's a video of Augustin Carstens, if I'm saying that right, Augustin Carstens, saying the quiet part out loud at a press conference.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
So there you go. They want to know what you're buying. Of course they do. He's saying it there in black and white. This is the thing. When they tell you the truth, believe them. They won't know what someone's buying if they pay cash. Okay. Now, on the face of it, you go, well, why do you need to know what we're buying anyway? And, of course, on a base level, on a lower level, they want rid of cash so that they can tax everything. Suddenly, if you pay someone cash in hand, the state doesn't know about it. They can't get their grubby mitts on their percentages of it. And that, of course, is part of the reason that they want a cashless society. The other reason is utmost control. It's not just a case of once we've got central bank digital currencies, we will know what everyone is buying. And of course, they will know what everyone's buying. They'll know where everyone's shopping. They'll know where everyone's going. But more than that, it would give them the ability to prevent you doing it. So it's not just a case of, because all of it will be controllable. So it's not just a case of going, oh, that's bad. That guy's eating far too much meat. I've seen from his his bank statement, the guy's had steak 5 times this week, like he's Henry VIII. What it would give them the power to do is to prevent you going to buy the steak. So when you have a steak on a Monday and you go again to the shop on a Tuesday and go, I fancy a bit of sirloin again. Yeah, I'll try and, computer says no. And with that, you have the absolute utmost control. If you can control what people can purchase, if you can control where people can go, whether they can use public transport, which they'll be able to control through this central bank digital currency, because it'll all be tied in the end through to your social credit score, where you've got, I've got it on my phone, so I've not got cash anymore. So if I walk in and I go, excuse me, mate, can I have that, please? There's cash. Can I get on the train, please? There's cash. Well, that's fine. But once it's all controllable and digital and everything is surveilled with facial recognition, which is popping up everywhere underneath the radar, then when I go somewhere and go to purchase something, then, well, they've got me 2 ways. They've got me with the facial recognition, so they know who I am. And then when I try and pay using digital currency, again, they have control over that wallet. So they can control whether I can purchase something or whether I can get on the train. It's absolutely insane. And we're sleepwalking towards it. And the reason we're sleepwalking towards it, and I've said this a couple of times this week on different shows on Iconic, and I actually wrote an article on it last week for iconic.com. It's convenience. Everything is convenience. That's how we do it. It's easier than using cash because you just go, boop. You don't have to fumble around and all that sort of stuff. Because that's hard, isn't it? Putting your hand in your pocket. And it's the same as digital ID. It's easier, isn't it? And it will be the same as facial recognition. You'll find that they'll use that in airports and stuff. And in fact, they already are. Where, you've got, wait in a big long queue and hand over your passport. And don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You can see that rhetoric coming out of Sir Keir Starmer in the UK at the moment, where he's pushing the fact that you can use these e-gates because of his new deal with the EU, his surrender deal. It's more time you can spend on the beach if you're on holiday. And how great would it be if you just walk through the airport and the camera recognizes you immediately and goes, yeah, bosh, that's Dave. Cool. There you go, mate. Go and get a pint and get down the beach. And Dave will go, I don't know why he's called Dave. Dave will go, oh, wow, that's great, isn't it? That gives me an extra half an hour on the beach. I reckon I can get 2 Stellas down me in half an hour. And it's sold as that convenience, when actually the whole reason for it is then they've got the ability to go, sorry, Dave, you're not coming in. Sorry, Dave, you're not flying. You've flown twice in the last 18 months. You've used up your carbon quota, I'm afraid, Dave. Sorry, you're going to have to go back down to Skeggy. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, but I do like it when they say the quiet part out loud. I have to say that, going back to that video, because a lot of this is one thing, and I found this a lot during Rona, but it's not just Rona. It's been going on lots of stuff, but I use that as an example because of Klaus Schwab's The Great Reset. How much was the public kind of, opinion that was obviously completely perceptually controlled by the media about the Great Reset, connecting it with conspiracy theories? So I've actually seen mainstream media bubbleheads, we'll go with bubbleheads, mainstream media bubbleheads, talking about the conspiracy surrounding the Great Reset and Klaus Schwab. The dude wrote a book called COVID-19, The Great Reset, and you can buy it on Amazon. It's not a conspiracy theory, mate. I can buy it in paperback. I'm not going to, but I can. Because they always tell you. And what's so good about that is when you have people go, no, it's a conspiracy theory, mate, you can go, bosh, there it is, mate. And it's the same with this. When you talk about central bank digital currencies and how it's all about control, and people go, oh, for goodness sake, Gareth's got his tinfoil hat on again. Not everything. It must be weird being as paranoid as you. It's not about that. It's about convenience. It just makes it easier. Yeah, that's how they get the foot in the door, mate. But what's so good about this particular video there about Augustin Carstens is he even uses the term control. He even says that the central bank will have control over it. So he's telling you. And like I said before, when they tell you who they are and what they're up to, believe them. Right, now final story today. I'm just going to touch on this briefly because this week on Gareth Tonight, on last night's show, I was talking about Lucy Connelly and the fact that she's the lady for people around the world that went to prison for 2.5 years for a tweet that she then deleted 3 hours later and apologized profusely for. But like I said in the show, no one wants apologies anymore because they don't accept them, so they're pointless. And the point I was trying to make in that is yes, that ridiculous prison sentence is about shutting people up. It's about frightening people, and it's about stopping others from speaking out. Because you look at Lucy and go, geez, I don't want to go to prison. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I think there's another element to it, which is to incite people, to wind people up to the point where you've got paedophiles and sex offenders either escaping jail or having their prison sentences cut by half by the same judge, by the way, that has refused to reduce the sentence of Lucy Connelly. That winds me up, and that's going to be winding people up at home that are looking at the justice system saying, well, I've got no faith in it. I've got no faith in government. I've got no faith in the justice system, in which case I'm going to have to take action myself. I'm going to have to take my own steps to get where I want to go because I don't have to rely on the justice system because it's corrupt, right? So that, I think, is part of it. Because as I've said repeatedly, I think they're happy if people are meh watching Bargain Hunt at home because they're controlled. They've shut up. They're too frightened to say anything. And then you've got the others that are so enraged that they will take to the streets and chuck a rock at a copper. I think they're happy with both of those scenarios because they're both controllable. That side's done. We've already got them marginalised. That's fine. That side, we can use an excuse to crack down on anyone that speaks out against government and anyone that is considered a dissenter. So they work. The people in the middle that are speaking out, but not violently, not aggressively, but very calmly, they're the problem. They're the ones that are very, very difficult to negotiate for the cult of the establishment. So I wonder how much of that is about inciting people, because it's just such a despicable thing. You go to prison for 2.5 years for a tweet. Yes, it was an ill-advised tweet. Yes, it was a stupid thing to say. But as I said in the show, if you can sit there at home and say you've never said anything stupid, I can sit here and call you a liar. With that in mind, Tommy Robinson, of course, who everyone will know, and I know Rich is doing the show tomorrow and he's going to talk about this in more depth, but I just want to touch on it briefly because part of what put Tommy Robinson in prison for his latest stint in jail was an interview he did with Iconic. Another thing that's amusing with that is, despite it being mentioned in court and despite my name being mentioned in court, all of the media outlets reported all the other podcasts, the other 3, I think it was, podcasts that had brought up in court against Tommy Robinson, where he discussed this Syrian refugee and what they claimed to be false allegations against him. But they didn't mention us and they didn't mention me. So they were mentioning, I think it was Rebel News they mentioned another couple of podcasts, not us. Read into that whatever you will. Anyway, he's now about to be released. And so then today, another story is now broken where he's been summoned to court yet again for 2 cases of harassment against journalists. And then he's about to go to court again in October for another case that he's got to answer. And like I say, Rich is going to talk about that more tomorrow. But just for my take on it, I'm thinking we're at a point now where Tommy Robinson is basically being made a martyr. And that actually, I don't think he's probably aware of that, to be honest. Now, there's things that I would probably agree with Tommy Robinson on, and there's a multitude of things that I absolutely would not agree with Tommy Robinson on. And we had many spats going back years online on social media where we were rowing back and forth and all sorts about those things. I still sat down here and had a cordial conversation with him because that's who I am. I think we should talk to all sides. I think that's how we find a place of balance in society, not by shutting people up. I'm a free speech absolutist. But I think by making a martyr out of Tommy Robinson, which is what I think they're going to do, or at least they're trying to do, again, you could incite people to take to the streets, and you could incite people to be violent. If anything happened to Tommy Robinson in prison, could you imagine what would happen on the streets of the UK? The anger of people that follow him and have a lot of respect for his views. What that would bring to the streets. Honestly, I know that guy went to prison for talking about there being a civil war in Britain coming, but we are at a point where it's not an impossibility at all. And I think the more you can incite people on both sides, by the way, to fight each other rather than look up and go, oh, hang on, we're all being played, then like I said earlier, it's chaos season, and the potential for chaos season to explode is pretty high at the moment. And I think that's why we all need to be quite streetwise, and we all need to have a look at what's going on and look at the deeper levels of it, rather than what we're seeing in the headlines, rather than what we're seeing on social media is, look at this is bad. Okay, all right, well, let's take a breath. Okay, right, let's look at the details. Let's look at what's really happening underneath that, the undercurrent that maybe we're being diverted from. And that's where, generally, in my experience, that's where you tend to find the truth of what's absolutely going on. But that's the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, the Tommy story, Rich is going to touch on a lot more tomorrow. He knows a lot more about it. He'll go a lot more in depth on it. I just wanted to kind of, give my 2 penneth. And in terms of the horrendous shooting in Washington, D.C., again, that story will evolve over the coming days. And so we'll almost certainly be commenting on that in future episodes of Trending. I will just reiterate one more time, stop killing people, please. No matter who you are, stop killing people. And that's a great place to start. And then we can kind of try and, get some kind of understanding of different points of view, different ways of looking at the world and all that kind of stuff once we've got beyond that one stumbling block, which is stop killing people. Thank you. Iconic Coffee, as always, sponsors, or at least is in association with Trending. If you head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code Trending, you get 10% off. Any money that comes from Iconic Coffee comes back into Iconic and allows us to get to you with information as often as we can. Obviously, we're doing Trending 5 days a week. We're now doing a Trending in the afternoon 3 days a week, which will almost certainly expand as chaos season expands. There's so much more to talk about. And as always, thank you so much for your support. And I hope you have a great rest of the week and a great weekend. See ya.